The class laughed at the black girl, and the teacher supported them. Until he showed up, from the Pentagon. At first glance, it's a typical school story. A new student tries to find her place among the spoiled offspring of influential families. But what if there's something much more hidden behind the simple words of a girl that no one believes? When the truth finally comes out, it's not just a reputation that's at stake, but national security. Corey Robinson noticed their stares the moment she walked into the St. Clair Prep building, wearing a backpack that wasn't designer and a jacket she'd been wearing since last year. No words were spoken, but it was clear. Saint-Font. Clair Prep wasn't just a private school. It was a miniature version of a world where every name meant something, and last names weighed more than grades. The kids who attended were senators, corporate owners, and people whose nannies had better resumes than many of their teachers. And against their backdrop, Corey, a black girl from an ordinary suburb, looked, to put it mildly, alien. She walked down the hallway, trying to keep her back straight, like her dad taught her. Don't give them a reason to think you're less than them. But when you're the only one not wearing Balenciaga sneakers, it's hard. "Hey, are you new?" A voice came from behind. Corey turned around. Standing before her was a tall, blonde guy with perfectly coiffed hair. Camden Lawrence. The congressman's son she'd learned from the brochure she'd been given on her first day. His face was polite, but his voice was frozen with mockery. "Yes," she replied. "I'm Camden. Welcome to the rich man's paradise. Where are you from?" "Arlington." "Oh, that's cool. My people keep a house there when they're not in Miami." "My people." She just nodded. "Well, I'll see you in social studies, new girl," he said, and walked on. In social studies, she sat by the window, closer to the door. The others sat in their usual places, exchanging glances, whispering. The teacher, Mr. Rawls, looked at her with an expression she had seen in adults before, a mixture of curiosity and reserved doubt. "We have a new girl. Introduce yourself," he said, without looking up from his magazine. "Corey Robinson. We moved recently." "And the parents?" "Who does what?" "Mom is a nurse. Dad, he works at the Pentagon in the cyber department." For a split second, the classroom was silent, and then someone, Camden, I think, giggled loudly. "Well, of course," he muttered. Several people chuckled. Someone whispered, "You should have said president right away." Mr. Rawls smiled too. "The Pentagon, you say? Well, we all have to strive for the best, don't we?" Corey felt her cheeks heat up. She knew her father had asked her to keep the job secret. But he really did work there. Not a spy, not a hero, but a real analyst. Special Network Defense. Her father was not a fiction. She sat down alone in the dining room. There was a hubbub, laughter, and the clink of dishes all around. Two girls passed by. One said out loud, clearly for her benefit, "Do you really think it's the Pentagon? Looks like she's been watching too many TV shows." Corey finished her lunch, trying not to show her emotions. That evening, when she got home, she called her father. He was away on business, as was often the case. "Everything okay, baby?" he asked. "Yeah, they just don't believe you work at the Pentagon." "And?" "And they laugh." He paused. Then he said, "They'll laugh until they see who you are. And one day, they'll find out who I am. I promise you, one day you'll stand there and they'll listen." She didn't answer. She just held the phone and listened to his voice. The next day, the school announced, in 3 weeks, it would be Career Day. Parents would give talks about their professions. Students had already shared. Some mothers were judges, some fathers were lobbyists, fund owners, space program developers. When it was her turn, Corey said quietly, "My father, if he manages to return from his business trip, can also speak. He works at the Pentagon." The teacher smiled reservedly. In the journal, next to her name, she wrote "questionable" in pencil. Someone giggled again. As she was leaving the classroom, Corey saw a sticker on her notebook. "FBI on the way? Don't forget your bulletproof vest." She peeled off the piece of paper and threw it into the trash can. With each passing week, being at St. Clair Prep became more and more difficult. At first, Corey simply tried to stay out of the spotlight, then to not respond. And now, it seemed like her very existence was annoying to some people, especially Camden. "I heard you said something about the Pentagon again," he said casually at the locker. "I didn't say anything," Corey answered calmly. "They asked me. I answered. Of course. You're a special agent. Or maybe the general's daughter?" He grinned and walked away, throwing over his shoulder. "Dad's probably having coffee with James Bond." Corey didn't answer. She was used to this game. Say nothing directly, but put everything she needed into her intonation. The others followed suit. Rumors began to spread around the school. Some claimed that her dad was actually the driver. Some that he didn't exist. At the media journalism club that Corey naively signed up for, they told her to her face, "We need an interview with real parents, not fictional ones." Sorry. She didn't apologize. She just got up and left. In history class, when we were discussing government structures, someone in the back row loudly whispered, "Maybe Corey can explain it to us? She's straight from the Pentagon." Even the teacher, Miss Lowry, couldn't help but smile slightly. And yet, that wasn't the worst thing. What was worse was the feeling that even adults didn't believe you. One day after class, Corey stayed behind to ask a question about her homework. Mr. Rawls, without looking up from his computer, suddenly said, "Corey, tell me honestly, is it true that your father works at the Pentagon?" "Yes," she answered calmly. "Don't get the idea that I'm judging. It's just that sometimes children make things up to feel more confident. Here, of course, the level is high." He emphasized the last word, as if to imply that she did not belong here. "He really works there. I can bring him to career day, Mr." Rolls nodded reservedly. "Well then, I'll write it down. Let him come. It'll be interesting to listen to." But his voice didn't sound like someone who was expecting to meet someone serious. More like someone who was ready to be exposed. That evening, Corey sat in her room, staring at the blank screen of her tablet. Her mother was working the graveyard shift. Her father was away in Maryland. He had called yesterday, asking her not to worry and promising to be back on time. But now she doubted. Would he come? And if he didn't come, they wouldn't believe her. Or worse, they'd say that he didn't come because he didn't exist. She wrote him a short message. "Are you sure you'll come?" The answer came in a couple of minutes. "I promise, baby. I won't miss it for anything. And yes, I'll take a badge. In case anyone needs proof." Corey smiled. But not for long. In the morning, there was a printout on her desk. A photo of a man in overalls signed, "Here's your daddy. Cleaning the Pentagon is a job too." Corey took the paper, folded it carefully, and hid it in her backpack. Someone was watching her reaction, but she didn't give it a chance. At lunch, one girl sat at her table, Liv. Before that, they had hardly communicated. Liv looked at her seriously. "You know, they all think you made it all up." And you? Corey hesitated. I don't know. But if it's true, you're brave. If it's not true, it was stupid to say. They don't forgive such things here. It's true, Corey said quietly. Liv nodded and stood up. Then you better hope he comes. There was a week left until career day. A list of participants was hanging by the office door, and next to it someone had written in pen, "Or is he on a secret mission again?" Corey wiped the writing away with her finger. The ink smudged, but the mark remained. When she got home, there was an envelope on the table. It was postmarked Washington. Inside was an official invitation to Career Day and a printout with a pass. James Robinson, Department of Defense. Father kept his word. She hung the pass on the wall above her desk. A reminder. Things were about to change. The morning of Career Day began not with panic, as usually happens before important events, but with silence. Everything in Corey's head was too clearly structured. She got up before the alarm, put on a neat skirt ironed by her mother, a white shirt, and a cardigan. Dad promised to come by 11. His speech was 6th on the list. Everything had to go right. Even the bus was on time. The assembly hall was crowded. The parents entered through a separate entrance and were met by senior students in formal suits. Each had a badge, an inscription with the last name and position. Corey looked around, trying to find a familiar face. Her father was not there. "Excited?" a voice said from the side. "Camden." "Everything's fine," she replied. "I heard we have a special guest today. Straight from the Pentagon, they say? Or a Hollywood casting call?" "You'd be surprised," Corey said calmly. "Oh, I already am, especially if he shows up at all." He walked past without even looking in her direction. Parents took to the stage one after another. Sophia's father spoke about an oil company, Dylan's mother about lobbying. Someone pitched a quantum computing startup. The stage was adorned with a banner that read, "The future begins with example." Each speaker got 5 minutes. The applause grew. When it was Corey's turn, the host, a music teacher, smiled and announced, "Now we have Corey Robinson." Her father is a Defense Department employee. The stage was too big. The room was too quiet. Corey walked up to the microphone, feeling her legs buckle a little. "Hello, my name is Corey, and I want to tell you a little about my dad's job. He works for the Pentagon. He's a cybersecurity specialist. That means he helps protect digital systems from attacks, hacks, and data leaks. Somewhere in the hall, there was a chuckle. One, but then another. Someone from the students whispered, "Now pay attention. An actor is about to come out." "He couldn't come?" Camden asked loudly, without embarrassment. "Or is his mission classified?" The room giggled nervously. Even some of the parents exchanged glances. Corey swallowed. "He will. He promised." "Well, yes." One of the adults intervened. "This is not a normal job. There are probably delays here. A matter of national importance." "Let's let her finish," the teacher muttered, but her voice sounded tired. "He's just late. Corey looked at the entrance where her parents were supposed to appear. Empty. She fell silent. "Well then," said someone in the front row. "T next?" Corey was still standing. She didn't want to leave the stage. That would mean giving in, admitting they were right. She repeated, "He will come." And then there was a strange movement in the room. One of the parents, a man in a suit, a congressional staffer by his badge, pulled out a tablet. His face tightened. then the other. The woman from the tech company frowned as she checked her phone. Corey felt the air in the room change. Someone was whispering, "Is it a virus? What's wrong with the network? Is someone hacking into the internal mailing list?" The hall buzzed. The director's assistant came out on stage and quickly said something into the host's ear. She nodded and stepped back. And then the doors swung open. A tall man in a dark blue jacket entered the hall. No tie, with a neat folder in his hands. He walked forward with a confident gait and went up onto the stage. "Sorry for the delay," he said, looking directly at Corey. "I had to stop the attack. Literally." Corey recognized the voice, and suddenly all the noise around her became background. She took a half step back, and he put his hand on her shoulder. "James Robinson, Department of Defense. This morning, we detected a targeted hacking attempt on devices connected to the local area network of this building. It appears that someone wanted to obtain data on the people in the room. Some of you may have noticed strange activity on your devices. At this time, I would ask that you turn off Wi-Fi and do not open any unknown notifications. Pause. But don't worry. We've already intercepted most of the attack. The service is already working on the source." There was silence in the hall. Then there was applause. Cautious, but real. Corey was still standing next to him. He leaned over and whispered, "I promised I'd come." She didn't answer. She just nodded. Now no one laughed in the hall. After James Robinson's words, the auditorium froze. No whispers, no movements. Only the muted hum of tablets and phones being turned off, as if someone had given the command. Silence. Even those who had been giggling half an hour ago were now looking at the stage with bewildered attention, as if they could not believe that this was really happening. The school's principal, Mr. Eldridge, walked quickly to the stage and turned to Corey's father. "Mr. Robinson, are you sure that this is really a threat?" "I'm sure." He nodded briefly. "We've tracked unauthorized access to the local network. The penetration was carried out through a fake school Wi-Fi login page, disguised as an official one." He pulled a tablet out of the folder and pulled up a diagram on the screen. An event log, IP addresses, routes. One of the parents gasped when he saw his name among the targets. Most of those present are connected in one way or another with government agencies, large companies, lobbying organizations. Whoever it was, they were preparing. Data collection, passwords, email, contacts. "Are we under attack?" One of the mothers couldn't resist asking. "Not anymore. The threat has been neutralized, but we do not rule out that this was just reconnaissance. Therefore, I ask everyone who connected to the network today to hand over their devices to our group at the exit. We have persuaded the school management to cooperate. I promise, everything is confidential and in compliance with protocols." He spoke calmly, without pathos, but with a firmness that made Corey's skin crawl. This was her father. And now no one doubted that he was telling the truth. After the speech, Mr. Eldridge invited James and Corey into the office. 2 officers from the cyber unit were already there. They arrived literally 15 minutes earlier, in civilian clothes. The conversation was fast and to the point. Corey sat a little to the side, watching her father. He was focused, calm. Occasionally he nodded, pointed to something on his tablet. There were no unnecessary words in his speech. He was not trying to show off, as Camden would say. He was just doing his job. "We can't say for sure who's behind it," James said. "But the school system masquerading as a hoax is clever. They were counting on no one noticing, especially on a day when so many high-value targets are in one place." So it was career day, that was the bait? The director clarified. Or a catalyst. It was a perfect opportunity. Relaxed users, a common network, a large number of influencers. But we had already passed the data up. Now it's up to our team. Half an hour later, Corey and her father walked out into the schoolyard. The event was ended early, with some parents leaving immediately, while others lingered in the hallway, discussing the situation. Officers were already accepting devices at the door. Camden approached them. Corey braced herself for sarcasm, but his face was different. No smirk, no bravado. Mr. Robinson? He began. Listen, I wanted to apologize. To you and to Corey. I was an idiot. No one thought any of this was true. Sometimes the truth is hardest to see when it doesn't fit your expectations, James replied calmly. Camden nodded, turned away and walked away. That was weird, Corey whispered. Get used to it, baby. When the truth comes out, a lot of people's eyes drop. An emergency meeting was held at the school that afternoon. The principal publicly apologized to Corey, thanked James for his quick and professional response, and mentioned that the school would be reviewing its internal safety protocols. Corey sat in the front row. No one was looking at her sideways anymore. No one was whispering. No one was giggling. Liv, the same girl who once said, "It better be true," sat down next to him. You know, she whispered, I've never known anyone whose parents worked at the Pentagon. Now I do. Corey didn't know what to say. She just smiled. After the meeting, he and his father went out to the car. Okay, he said, starting the engine. Where should I take you, heroine? I can just go home. But first, can we go to the cafe on the corner? I want ice cream. It's too serious a day. Ice cream is a strategy for psychological stabilization, he winked. I approve. She buckled up and looked out the window. They were driving past a school. Her school. Now it's for real. 2 days after career day, the school was quieter. Not literally. Bells were still ringing and loud-voiced teenagers were still running through the halls. But the atmosphere had changed. It no longer felt hostile. The looks directed at Corey no longer felt mocking. Now it was interest and respect. The first person to approach her in the library was her social studies teacher, Mr. Rawls. He looked as stern as ever, but there was a different note in his voice. Corey, he began, adjusting his glasses. I'm sorry. I think you know you haven't been on your best behavior. She nodded, but didn't smile. She just said calmly, Thanks for telling me. We're having a new unit on digital security. I was wondering, maybe you could speak to the class, tell them what you know? Or maybe you could ask your dad to send some materials. The offer was honest, not condescending, and that was nice. I'll think about it, she replied. After school, Liv invited her to join them for lunch. There were 3 other girls at their table. One of them, Madison, asked cautiously, Did you really know there would be an attack? No. He never says anything like that. He just promised that he would come. And he came. On time. He's cool, Liv said. For the first time in weeks, Corey felt like she wasn't a guest in this building. She was a part of it. That evening, Mom brought home a pizza. Dad had just flown in from a briefing in D.C. They had dinner in the kitchen, as usual. No waiters, no security, no pomp. How was your day? He asked. Not as noisy as last time, Corey chuckled. Everything calms down quickly with you, Mom intervened. In our time, A week of discussions would be the minimum. Do you think everyone will forget? Corey asked. Father put the glass on the table. Some, yes. Most, no. But what matters is not what they remember. What matters is who you became after that. She nodded. He was right. The following week, Corey took to the board in computer science class. She talked about phishing, how to tell a fake site from a real one, which passwords are stronger, and how malicious scripts work. Everyone was listening, including Camden. He wasn't joking anymore. On the contrary, he asked a couple of smart questions. When the lesson was over, he came up and said, "You know, I still think you made up the coffee with James Bond thing. But you're great. Thanks, Camden. And you're almost less annoying when you're not laughing." He laughed and left. At the end of the week, Corey passed by the bulletin board. There was a new schedule of clubs hanging there. Someone had added it in marker. "We are looking for people for a new cybersecurity club. Headliner, Corey Robinson. Those who know will understand." She grinned. She turned to take a picture and saw Liv standing next to her. "Will you participate?" she asked. "I haven't decided yet, but probably, yes. Dad will be happy. He's a hero, you know? He's just doing his job, just like Mom." Liv nodded. "And you?" Corey thought for a moment. "And I just didn't keep quiet." On Sunday, she and her father went to the same cafe again, a small place on the corner that always smelled of caramel. They sat by the window, ate ice cream, and watched the children playing outside. "Well, baby, ready for the next attack?" He chuckled. She looked at him, then at the cup of chocolate chips and said, "Always."